Northern California, and I'm one of the CASAS program specialists. I have a background in databases, which is what drew me to the CASAS team 2 years ago. But before that, I did proctoring, and I have a bunch of different experience in both K-12 and the university setting. So I'm very grateful to be here today supporting Martha. If you have questions as we go along, she has a number of things that she's going to be presenting, but we are also looking at questions in the chat. So probably the best way for Martha to proceed would be to share, and then I'll be looking in the chat if you have special questions that we can answer off on the side. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Welcome today. If you could put your first name, last name, and agency name in the chat box if you're not connected via phone. I know it's really hard to do that on a phone. And that way we know that you're here. Thank you.
And hi, I'm Nicole Jordan from CASAS, Senior Data Analyst. I primarily work with California agencies on their data submission for WIOA and then their CAPE. I will too be in the chat to answer any questions. And I'll reiterate again what Janice said. If you can please put your name and agency in the chat, that would help us a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies, for that awesome introduction. So again, folks, welcome and thank you for your time. I'm going to go over a few miscellaneous. They already mentioned about typing your name and your agency on the chat pod. We're going to be using the chat pod for posting questions. And if you would like to also unmute yourselves, that would be great, that you can interact and place your question live. We can also address that, whichever you prefer. Another thing is that we will be using the chat pod to enter some links. So at the end of the training, you may save your chat and you can keep those links for your reference. We will also be recording this webinar for training purposes, and we will later post it on our website, well, actually on our YouTube channel. We do have a YouTube channel where we have a wealth of documentation and training videos. And I will go ahead and now share my screen so we can show you this session description overview for today's training. Again, thank you again. It is 10:30 in the morning, so I'm going to stop my email. Okay. All right, folks, thank you so much. So this session that we're going to do today, it will show us the features of the TOPSpro Enterprise program, the database system. Just works, by experiencing firsthand on how these features operate. So we were going to go through the different navigating in the TOPSpro Enterprise program, showing you all those menus that we have available. And I'm going to show you how to find and edit data, add new records manually, and how to access and add new users or creating accounts for your staff members that have created or have completed the certification trainings, or any of those that need access to TOPSpro Enterprise. So you probably could be data managers, could also be proctors, or could also be users in administrators or assisting administrators on how to use a TOPSpro Enterprise. So welcome to you all. We're going to start by going back to our homepage here on our CASAS homepage. Right now, what I'm sharing is the CASAS homepage link. So let me go ahead, and I have a link here for you to post it on our chat. And you are welcome to share your camera or not, whichever you prefer. So right now I am going to put this in the chat pod so everybody can have this link. This is our initial web page where you can find a wealth of information, and this is what I am showing right now. So documentation for today's training, you will be able to find it under training and support. And then when you get to the training and support webpage, you're gonna get to this page where you have other links at the bottom left of this page. And if you click on the eTests Online Help, this link would take you over to some other documentation. And as you can see, if you scroll down, you're gonna find several boxes with important downloadable PDFs that will help you on how to do this information. And for instance, you can be monitoring WTUs, and if you download this PDF, it will give you step-by-step instructions on how to monitor the WTUs, for example. But for today's T-Basics training, we will be using the TOPSpro Enterprise Basics Quick Start. So I've already downloaded this TOPSpro Enterprise Basics, and this is what I'm showing you right now under the session description. I understand that we have several people from different states, and we are going to be addressing this for a national audience. We have several servers. First of all, we want to know how to connect into the TOPSpro Enterprise. And how to connect into TOPSpro Enterprise, you can find it here on page number 5. We have several servers in here for global, for California. Global contains all the rest of the states except California and the state of Washington. So these are the several, so if you are in Maine or in the state of South Carolina, then we do have the global server for all the rest of the states. For the training information, we have a special server called Simulation or Rolling Hills Simulation Server. That is a different server that we are going to be using for today's training. So this is the URL that I am going to use today. So first we would need to connect into the website, which is, I clicked on the link. So this takes us to the etesonline.org/rollinghills, and then automatically the /HTML5 # will get in there. So first, or before I go in there, I also want to mention the system requirements. The system requirements for you to install TOPSpro Enterprise. And again, you can find that on your left-hand side. This will take you to the ETES system requirements, but within that, it will give you the TE system requirements link. So if you click on TE system requirements, which I'm going to post right now on the chat pod as well, this will tell you what are the minimum requirements for your computer. So it is very important to have in mind that you need to have a Windows 10 computer. But if you use a Mac, you won't be able to install this directly on your Mac operating system. You will probably need to install a boot camp utility to install in a partition of the disk to install Windows 10 operating system. With that said, I am going to also post a couple of more links on our chat, which are for the CASAS Tests Online Help and the TOPSpro Enterprise Help. These couple of links in here will get you over to this page again, the eTest Online. And again, if you come back to the training and support, you can see both links for the eTest Online Help and the TOPSpro Enterprise Help. Both of them contain a great deal of documentation, but for today's training purposes, we will see a document inside the eTest Online Help under the box that says TOPSpro Enterprise Basics, and then the TOPSpro Enterprise Quick Start. So you can print this for yourself, you can download it or save it into your computer if we want to stay green. And then I will be going over some of these pages in here, and please feel free again to stop me and ask any questions. I do not see them as interruptions, but as an opportunity to explain myself better. So with that said, let's go ahead and start. I will go do a new share Let me see, let me pull this over here and do a new share. Oh, you can see already my TOPSpro Enterprise, right? TOPSpro Enterprise. So
yes.
Thank you. So if I minimize that, what I did is I clicked on this link that I had shown you before for training. Go to etasonline.org. I clicked on this link and then it took me over to my web browser. And what I need to do is just install the TE client button on your top left-hand corner. Right now I'm using the Google Chrome web browser. You can use any modern web browser as long as it's not Internet Explorer, because that is kind of phased out. So it will allow you to install the TE client by clicking on that button. And what this will do is it will open a new instance of TOPSpro Enterprise. If you don't have it installed, it will ask you to install, and that's going to take a matter of a few moments, a few minutes or a few seconds, depending on the speed of your internet. And then what that does is that it just places an icon on your desktop. It saves it for you so you can quickly grab it from there whenever you want to open it, and then it will open it up on this page. So from the server, you have the several servers that I was explaining before, the global, California, Washington, Lyric, etc. But today we're going to click on the Rolling Hills simulation server. The agency information, it is on the link that did I send you that link? Let's see. We do have a link for the Rolling Hills simulation server. It's a PDF where it explains you how to log in. And again, let me put that on the chat pod. That link will explain to you which accounts to use. We have 50 generic user accounts for administrators, 50 generic accounts for teachers into TOPSpro Enterprise. And then for the ETA side, we have Proctor and 50 coordinators, 50 Proctor and 50 coordinator accounts. So the password that I'm using is it's admin, all lowercase. The agency ID is 4908 for the Rolling Hills, and the user accounts must be set as an email style. So administrator, and then any number between 0 and 50. Like for instance, I can use administrator 0 at RHAS, which is the email extension for the Rolling Hills Adult School. And then the word admin, all lowercase, pretty simple, huh? And then I'll just go ahead and connect, or I can type enter on my keyboard and that will automatically connect me. So on the last link I sent, it contains the instructions and there's all the user accounts information for the Rolling Hills. So right now it opened me up on this blank page. And it has this menu on the top left area, and then it has the user controls and version and build on your top right. It has the user information, who I'm logged in as, and also the general screen controls for your screen. So let me start off by clicking on some of these menus. As you can see, if I hover the mouse over the menus, it's going to show you the different information that you can see, and you can see that there's different options, and then there's other sub menus contained within the menu. So there's a lot to it, but trust me, it's going to be easy once you start navigating through and practicing through TOPSpro Enterprise. So right now my screen is blank, but by default, we have a start page, which is a pretty neat start page. So we have here, let me click on this TE file. All the TOPSpro Enterprise relates, and it's very similar to any Windows application system. As you know, you have the file, you have the view, you have the different submenus. So this kind of relates to any Windows system. So in this TE icon on your top left, if you just hover your mouse over it, it's going to tell you where you are connected to in the server, to the Rolling Hills simulation in this case, and what is the agency ID and user administrator. So that is also neat to just hover the mouse and know what you are connected into. Now I'm going to click on this TE icon, and you can see that you have a lock feature in here. You have a disconnect, we have a change password, associate account, options, and exit. So these all have different meanings. So the lock feature is in case you want to step away from your computer, and if you're in the office and there's multiple people, if this is a public computer, you definitely may want to lock the TopspsPro Enterprise just in case you walk away for 10 minutes or so. This lock feature will lock it for now, and then it will allow you to enter your password once you're back into the computer. The disconnect feature, it does almost the same, but it kind of closes down the TopspsPro Enterprise. When you lock it, it actually brings you back to where you were working before. If you didn't happen to close any pages, it will still show you any listers or any information that you were working on prior to. If you disconnect, it will start you fresh from the get-go. So you'll have to go back to your listers once again. If you change the password, if that's something you need to do, you can click on it and then change and reset your password. Associate account would be for some more advanced levels. We normally never use it, but in case you need to do it, you'll probably need to contact us directly so we can explain that a little bit better. And then we have the options tab. I'm going to click on the options and show you this box where we have several tabs in here, like you would see it on an Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to go over each one of these tabs. Normally we have the general tab on the first line here. We have a default agency of Rolling Hills Adult School. Whenever you connect into your regular agency, you're going to see the agency's name in here. And then if you would like to always open it up on a default site, you can, I guess, also decide that. I would guess you would like to see all the information from the entire agency, but that's one thing you can specify as well. Text and icon would be the toolbar display on the top area. And then some of these features like containerful path, I wouldn't really, mess with it. I would just keep it to the defaults, but this could be something that you would like to expand, like the inactive timeout interval. If you are sitting on your own computer or you're at home and you don't want to TopspsPro Enterprise close like about 30 minutes later that you have not used your computer, you can always extend this to, I don't know, maybe 500 minutes, depending on, what your duties are or what you want to use the TopspsPro Enterprise. Like for us in tech support, that we have TopspsPro Enterprise open all day. So we always like to extend it to the maximum amount, which is 999 minutes, but that's a little bit exaggerated, but it's always up to you. If you want to just have it close, like automatically close it whenever your timeout interval is 30 minutes, then that's the default, like half an hour. But yeah, you are welcome to extend it as much as you want. And then our next tab in here, you have, open the start page. Like in this case, I unpinned it. For some reason, I was just looking over through these menus, but I would like to show it. So I'd like to start to put it on pinned. And that's what I did before. This is normally by default set. It has a little check mark and it's pinned. So it always populates that start page. And I'm going to show it to you in just a second once we're done with this. And then auto open reports manager. That's another feature if you want to open it up, the reports manager list. And we're going to explain that in just a little bit later. Then another thing, if those of you who are familiar with eTest Online, you may notice that you probably receive a warning sometimes of, oh, so-and-so WTUs are on your server, and if you need to make another order, then this is a warning that normally gives you that message. By default, you have the 500 unless you have come back in here and remove that. You can minimize that to 100 web test units if you want to know when you're getting low. This will give you a notification once you log into eTest Online. It'll say you have reached the 100 limit. If you want to go ahead and make an order, then that's up to you. You can also minimize this to the very minimum amount of 50, so you can continue receiving those warnings. There's we can't put it to 0, unfortunately, but you can set it to 50, which is the minimum amount. This is sometimes helpful when you are doing e-tests. Now, our next tab is the name options. Like when you're entering information, I don't know if it's had happened to you that you try to enter the first name of someone's first name, and or some information that it will change it, or like maybe an acronym, maybe you want to probably type in CASAS all uppercase, and when you set to proper, it's going to only capitalize the first letter, and then the rest of the letters are just going to show in lowercase. So this is what you can do. You can set it to unchanged, and that will keep on setting up the text as you specifically want it to. All right, and then remembering selected last schema will always carry on with that, with this decision that you've made in here. So for listers, you have other information that I would normally just suggest keep it as a default. I always would recommend to come back into this training database, the rolling kills, and uncheck and do the different options in here, and then try to look at the listers, and they will see a little bit different as well. So for this, we'd also try to keep it to the defaults. We normally have selected some default information. So whenever you want to make any changes, you can always, double check and make the changes, and then repeat the operation so you can try to run the reports. Or yeah, this is a little bit more advanced feature, but you can always start learning on it. And definitely, again, I would recommend using the TOPSpro Enterprise rolling kills. I'm going to go over some important import information as well. These are set by default. If you use an attendance system, a third-party attendance system, I would definitely have you check on the imports, what is coming through from an attendance data. And then you would make your decisions in here, like if this important information like exports cumulated attendance hours, depending on what your attendance source is. If you are taking attendance, you can also look into the imports tab and see what you have set in there. For exporting as a third party as well, you can also verify in here which type of files. Select default student identifier for third-party exports would be the student ID. I would just, again, keep it to the defaults. And then we have other tabs, a couple more tabs like panels. We have max 10 listers, maximum of 10 listers for reports and for listers as well. So I wouldn't, again, make any changes to any of these, but just to let you know that there are some important features, not hidden, but it's under the options tab. Okay, so you have knowledge of that. And again, use the Rolling Hills database to make changes and see how your database behaves. Okay, folks, any questions from the options tab so far? You can also put them on the chat box. Oh, and again, I am going to look at my start page, which I didn't present at the beginning. This start page is set by default to all of the users, and it includes neat information about listers, and it tells you, it gives you like some links and how to get to certain places here in TOPSpro Enterprise. So these links and shortcuts and some recent reports that maybe your agency has run, you can access them directly from here by just clicking on the report itself or on the link itself. It will take you to reports or to wherever you click on. And then you also have some welcome messages from CASAS, and if you have any state announcements, they're going to be probably also pasted in here. Any alerts, notifications, as well as our latest release notes from the TOPSpro Enterprise application will be there, and other CASAS important news and updates about our pandemic or social summer institute, and important information about our company as well. And you can always unpin this start page if you don't want to have it in there, or you can also close it by clicking on this red X box and bring it back by clicking on the view button and clicking again on the start page. And then we have the dashboard enabled here. And if we have time a little bit later or at the end of the training, I'll show you how to use the dashboard. The font size here is set to the normal, but if you would like to view like a large view of the menus, you can definitely click on that. You're going to notice that the font brings up, it's a little bit enhanced, and then you have the medium size and the normal, and then the small if you want to fit in more information in here. Okay, so I'm going to set it back to probably normal. I guess everybody can look at my screen very well. Is the screen size okay? Using your controls, you can give me like a thumbs up if you want. Okay, thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Good.
Excellent. All right, folks. So moving on here with our menus, we have different menus on the top. As you can see, the organization menu, contains all the information about your agency, or anything related or pertaining to your agency is going to be under the organization menu. As you can see, it has agencies, sites, classes, users, a bunch of information in here about your organization itself. And then if we look through the records menu is where you're going to find all the information pertaining to your students. Anything related pertaining to your students is going to be under records. And then of course, reports are just going to be under the reports menu, where you can run reports based off of your students' data, and as well as mixed with classes information. Then we have the tools menu, where it gives us additional important tools. And this also varies depending on your level of access. We have two different access to TOPSpro Enterprise, and I am seeing your question, Sylvia. I think this is what I am talking about right now. I'd like to know why all your list and organization records and data are in boldface, but when you open your own, it doesn't show like that. So some of them are grayed out, some of the menus are grayed out, and that's probably, maybe it's all because the basic access and the enhanced access. Depending on your type of web test units, if you use eTest Online, you probably purchased a set of web test units. The WTUs, which are the most basic web test units, that includes you basic access to TOPSpro Enterprise. If you need to have enhanced access and would like to have enhanced, features open, as well as some additional tools open in here, you would probably need to get the enhanced web test units, which are called TOPSpro Enterprise units. That will give you an enhanced access. But the difference in reality, of course, are, so in the basic access, you won't have the ability to add classes, to use classes, and classes are sometimes important if you add attendance in them, if you track attendance and control of your classes here, enroll students and do all that information, and also run other reports which are pertaining to classes. That is also, and then under reports for the basic access, you have 8 basic reports pertaining to your students' data mainly, and to your web test units, of course, and demographic information, but there are some other reports that could also be available. Okay, perfect. So again, let me start here by showing here your organization menu. I normally like to direct our new users into this organization agencies, where you're going to find your agency's information, who is the director, and basic information about this. This is, you have a scroller bars probably over at the bottom and towards the right-hand side whenever you have so many records in here. But this agency will only show one information, or one agency's name. When we double click on this, you're gonna see that it opens up another tab on the top, okay? So this kind of looks like in an Excel spreadsheet that you would toggle back and forth within the different tabs. And you always have a little red X box on the tab that you're working on. So if you want to close that tab, it will take you back to the prior screen. So this is what we call listers. So we can double click again and it will open up again this information. And now it provides you more information about the agency. This is the general information, which is summarized here, always on the top area with a blue section. That is a summary of the information. But if you scroll down, you have this scroller bar towards the right, you're going to find some additional information about the agency. And then you also may notice this navigator on the left-hand side, where you can actually see more information about your agency. And this menu right here, it is very similar. As you can see, the information contained in here is very similar to the organization menu. So like, for instance, I have sites, I have test administrations, program years, users, access groups. If I click again on the organization menu, you can see that this information is the exact same, or it's very similar. Like users, you will find it here, access group, and that's the same exact information, but this is a more direct way to get to these users lister or the access group, which you can also come in here and click on organization agencies, double click on the record, and then click on sites. And for that instance, you're going to see all the sites listed in here. This is another lister, which I can also do if you click on organization sites, and it's going to present the exact same sites that we have. So let me just close this, just for your knowledge. And this descriptor, again, is going to give you the blue section on the top is the summary information about your sites, or where you are at right now at all times. It'll tell you the agency ID with the name, and explains about a little bit about the funding sources and how many WTs you have available. Now, this sites lister comprehends several buttons in here. For instance, you can add new sites by clicking this new button. You can add new subsites to any given site that you have here. It gives you a columns list button, a sorting button, delete. You actually won't be able to delete the sites, but you can contact tech support for assistance on that. And then you have this counter as well, which tells you how many sites you have and which site you are looking at right now, or which one you have highlighted. So like, for instance, I highlighted site 1, and it tells me here, or site 1 in this lister, which means that it's the 3rd one. So it's 3 out of 8. And you can use these arrows as well. So you can go towards the next site and find additional information about it. You may also export this list of sites or print it, or then you'll find these more buttons towards the upper right-hand corner, where you can always find more options inside of that more button. Okay, so it's important to always look under the more and find more information about it. So right now, let's go ahead and double click on this North Campus site so we can open it up and verify what information we can find under that North Campus. Again, it's going to give me a summary information on the top blue area. And then it's going to give me these 2 options in here, these 2 categories, like site identification and site contact. You can see that they have these collapsible buttons in here that you can collapse and then just uncollapse the one that you want to see. And this is the edit button. It is usually represented by this little pencil kind of icon in there. And this will allow you to edit any of the information in here. Like if you want to rename your site, you can always click on the edit button and rename it. You can also mark it as an e-test site. If you're using it for e-tests online, you can validate that in here. And then let me expand this site contact information. And then once you click on the edit button, you may enter the information about the contact in charge of that particular site, if it's one individual who's responsible for editing that. So we have a question from Anna. What if I click on it and won't allow me to edit? Okay, that is a good question. Maybe if you need to probably review your level of access. If you're the data manager, by all means, you should be able to have the proper rights to edit any certain sites information or any type of data. But if you're not the data manager, okay, then we'll probably need to correct your account, and we can probably follow up at the end of the training so we can reset your rights. And I'll explain that as well a little bit later on this training. So moving forward, we have an hour and a half, so we've already gone by about 30 minutes. So I'm going to continue moving forward. Again, from this navigator on the left-hand side, we have other options where you can see additional information about sites. We have class definitions. We have class instances, which we're going to go through in just a moment. We have registered students to that particular site, students by program year. We have users. We have all these options in here, like access groups, personnel, records, and testing session templates. Again, some of these, like personnel, for example, it is also reserved to our enhanced users, as well as class definitions and class instances. So it would be good to know what level of access you have. And we're going to try to go through some of the class information, but it might not be very helpful for those TE basic users, or it may be helpful if you would like to or interested on getting enhanced access, and that's probably I'm going to show it to you so you can know what you would be entitled to get. So closing that information, well, let me see. Let me go ahead and again, double click on the North Campus. And for instance, if I click on class definitions itself, this information, you can also find it under organization. Organization, classes, definitions. This would be a more direct way to get to that class definitions lister. But let me tell you the difference. Before I go in here, this is the class definitions that we got by opening the North Campus. So this definitely is only going to show me the classes under the North Campus site, because that's where I was in before. And it gives me a list, or here, like this counter of 1389. This is this TOPSpro Enterprise Enhanced, this Rolling Hills database is pre-populated with fictional data, which allows you to run reports and make modifications to the settings, and it actually helps you train better with the Rolling Hills database. So it has a wealth of data, as you can see in here. This is all fictional data. And another thing that the Rolling Hills does is that it refreshes nightly, because everything that you do one day, it resets overnight, and the next day we have our same fresh set of data that we had the day before. So you can continue working on that and not worry that you've saved some important information in there. Of course, this is fictional data, so we advise to use fictional data as well. But when you open one of the classes like we have right here, it opens up into a new tab, as you can see, and it tells you in the summary information on the blue section, it tells you what site you are in. We're in class 1012310. And if I would like to get to that same class from the organization menu, I can click on organization, classes, definitions. And once we get to the class definitions, this is going to show me an entire list of classes for all the sites. As you can see, is from the Rolling Hills Adult School, and this lister is giving me a different number, 2746, whereas the other tab, which can toggle back and forth, it gave me 1389. So if I want to see only the class definitions back to this lister just for the North Campus, I would need to click on this drop down and filter for the North Campus site. And then we have the 600, oh, this is because of the program year. We normally only have classes for the program year that have any activity. But if I click on this filter button, this green filter button, which is also enabled on all of your listers, you're going to see that this current program year is always embedded by default because it pulls up the data that has activity now in the current program year. Now you could close this by removing the filter or by clicking this default drop down by saying all, and then clicking OK. As you can see, when I clicked all, it removed the default filter. I can always come back to it as well. So it's up to you whether you want to remove it from here or remove it from the default and say all. So if I do that and click OK, it's going to bring me back to that same amount of classes that we had on the other lister, the 1389. So this is a cool feature that we have on the filters. Let me set it back to the default. And then it's going to show me only the classes that have activity. And as you can see, these links or these tabs keep growing. And if I want to see a specific, this is going to show me some listers which you can actually narrow down or expand as you would do it on an Excel spreadsheet. And you can also populate other information. Well, for the class definitions, there's not really much information to populate. But you can right click on any of the gray areas in here, like the column headers. If you right click on here, you will be able to show like other information. Right click again, and I want to show course category of the class. You right click again and you can either hide it or show other information. So it's up to you whether how many columns you want to populate, you want to see from your classes. So if I happen to double click on this orientation class that we have here at the North Campus, it's going to open up on the general information about the class. I'm going to open this or click on this edit button. It will show you the class ID number and the class description, which are the most basic information for you to enter in regards to entering a new class. CIP code and A22 course code is optional. If you don't have this information, you don't have to enter it. But once you see the class, the navigator on your left-hand side, from this class definition, you have other options like class instances, class enrollments, class records, and teachers. You can potentially add teachers and say who is teaching certain class, and that teacher may also have access to the class, to their very own class, to be able to enter attendance. That would be if you're interested on getting getting enhanced access. And if you do, this is a way to do it and to enroll students in a class as well as to add their attendance, which I'm going to go over in just a moment. So any questions so far? Okay, so I'm going to take that as I know. Okay, so now class instances that we have on the navigator on the left-hand side. So some important information about distinguishing class definitions and class instances. We have a lot of documentation on our website that would explain that. But in a nutshell, when you're creating classes, you would need to first create a class definition so you can define your class. And from that class definition, you can create class instances. And you have a limit of 1 class instance per program year for that specific class ID. So in another way of looking at this information and entering a new class, I would go to Organization, Classes, Definitions. When I click on class definitions, it's going to show me the same tab that I had been previously before from the site menu. I don't know if you remember. Let me bring you back in here. And this looks very similar, but remember we were looking at the North Campus site. So here in the regular class definitions, we're looking in the general site for all the sites. So I would have to click in here. I don't necessarily have to click this drop down. You can always click on this little filter button and also ask you the same amount of sites, and just click on the site that you want to see for, and then it's going to show me this exact same 627 classes. But if I happen to click on this new button on the top left corner and I want to create a new class, I just click on the new button and it opens up on edit mode. As you can see, I would need to start selecting the site and click on the North Campus to establish which site I want to save it into. And then the class ID, I'm going to just name it today's date, 2021. And I'm not going to enter any extended IDs, but this is normally used when you have the same class that meets during the program year, meets through different quarters or different periods like fall, winter, spring, and summer, and you want to use the same class ID number. Well, you can very well enter extended IDs to say fall or to say winter or spring, depending on, you know, if you want to use that same exact ID number, you can make it unique by entering an extended ID for that. And then you can say 21, or, you know, depending on what your needs are. And then that way it will save it as a unique ID number with the same class ID, but the extended ID is what makes it unique. And we can, and I can show you some links a little bit later on classes, or Nicole and Janice, if you have a chance, that'd be great to enter them into the chat pod for class creation. And then class description. This is the other important information that you must save. In this case, I'm gonna call it TOPSpro Basics, which is today's training's name. So once we have these two at the very minimum, selecting the site, selecting the entering class ID and description, I would just click on the save button. But before I do that, folks, please observe the navigator. This is going to change drastically once I click on the save button. As you can see, it now brings up the class instances. So thank you, Nicole, for that link. We have class instances, class enrollments, class records, teachers, and a lot of good information that we can enter in here. So I'm going to click on class instances. Now that I have created a class definition, I created it and I clicked on class instances. Now I'm going to create a new class instance for this class definition, which is going to give us the ability to specify more information about the class. As you can see, we have this scroller bar towards the right-hand side, and this, my folks, could be pretty overwhelming. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to collapse all these sections in here. I'm going to start one by one because that's, I guess, easier. First section in here, we have the class definition. So we have to, some of this information is already pre-populated, like the site and class definition information. Now I need to select the program year that I want to set it up for. You can set up class definitions for other years, but of course I want to do it for the current. So I'll just select the current program year in this case. And then I am going to move forward to our next category, and I'm going to expand the class instance information, and I'm going to scroll the bar, or I can actually or collapse this other section on the top, so it gives me more room to see all this information. And here is where you enter the specifics about the class. If you have a class that has a start date from, let's see, we have from February 19th or somewhere in February, and it ends on May or something like that. Well, then here you can move forward using this calendar, using these controls in here, or just skipping through the next month and so on. So I'm gonna make this class meet for a few few months. So I'll go ahead and use this calendar to start it in February and end it in May 31st. So it's up to your classes whether you want to specify that or just make it do all year round. If you have open enrollment, you can make it like from July 1st to June 30th. That way you can capture most of the students in that specific class. Now, next step is to select the instructional program of the class. If you have, this is maybe e-basic skills or ESL, depending on what kind of program this belongs to, I would just make it by default as a basic skills. You have some special programs which are pertaining mostly to some of our California funded agencies. So this is something else that we also have documentation on our website as well. But this for the general public and the entire nation, this probably may also be helpful for some programs that have like family lit or tutoring or distance learning, so popular these days. Or if you have a special program of corrections, then it's up to you which one you have to select. And then you have additional information. And just to clarify, folks, these are not necessary for you to save the record. Just as long as you type in the class instance information in here, the program year and the class start and end date, that would be sufficient for you to save the record. But of course, if you have all this information, you might as well want to go ahead and enter it, like the instructional settings, for instance, the physical setting, the start time and date, and if you have any computers in that class, and if you have any computers used in the lab connected to the internet or not. And then this is all additional information. You're welcome to enter it. And then to expand the last category in here, you can also set up the class schedule and, collecting distance learning attendance, duration in minutes. It all depends on what your class specifics are. And once you have that entered in there, you just click on the save button. And again, the navigator changes again. It changes and it gives you other important information about attendance, class enrollments, class records, and tests. So right now I am going to click on class enrollments so you can enroll. I'll show you how to quickly enroll a student into the class. And if you click on class enrollments, there's nobody enrolled in here, but you can click on the new button. And then you can select a student from this lister. This lister will show you all the students who have activity in this North Campus site, or you can also click on select from lister. So this is how you should probably enroll another student. I'll double click on the student and just hit the save button. Of course, the date entered class would be today's date. I want to enroll the date of the date that the class starts actually, and I'll just hit the save button. Okay, folks, so I have touched a lot on classes, but I just noticed that our time is flying. So I would also like to touch upon users. And I don't know if folks, if you have all these tabs open, if you have that, and you'll have to probably close tab by tab by tab. Well, there's a summarized way to do it. If you click on the pages button on the top right-hand corner, I would just say close all pages. And that actually saves you a lot of time on closing all the pages, and you would just start fresh by navigating here. Okay, any questions so far? I hope this is, you folks are, what I'm saying is kind of clear. So now another important way, or another thing that we usually need to explain on is on the users, because you may be administrator that you want to provide access to some other staff members that have completed the, oh, thank you, Anna. They have completed the proctor, the coordinator certification trainings, or the modules, the different modules 1, 2, 3, or 4 in our training website. Then I guess it's time for them to have access into TOPSpro Enterprise. And for that, again, you need to go to organization, and you can go directly to users. So you can just hit the new button on your top left-hand corner. So you can create a new user account for your staff members. Once you click on the new button, it's going to open on edit mode. Again, this little pencil, you won't have to click it anymore because it's already enabled and open for you. We have the scroller bar towards the right-hand side. And again, folks, if this information is too overwhelming, I would recommend just collapsing it, and it will just clear off of your mind here for just a second. So this is what I like to do, is just clear all that, and it just gives me section by section. So in the first section for selecting container, I would just recommend setting it to the defaults and leaving it to the container, which is at the local agency. This really depends much if you have a large agency where you have multiple sites and those multiple sites do not have connection within. Like if you have users that are only working at the North Campus, for instance, then you can set them up at the site level. That way, when they open up or when they log in at the site level, they won't have access to the other sites. If that is the case with your agency, if you don't have many sites and that is okay for them to look at the overall data, then I would recommend doing it at the agency level. So in this section, I wouldn't do anything for the container. I would just leave it as is. For selecting existing personnel, again, that's reserved for the enhanced users. So we also have documentation on our website on how to set up personnel records, and we may have to, and we may give out some other trainings that would be more specific towards, you know, basic or enhanced users, depending on what the features are involved. So we'll work on that in the future. But for now, we can just keep it to the default for selecting a container and don't do anything on that one. I will collapse now that section and expand my next section, which is user identification. User identification, we normally recommend to use the email address of the staff member. For instance, I am gonna type in my very own email. I'm just gonna type in the tech support at CASAS.org email. And then I am going to set a simple and quick password like CASAS, all lowercase. And then I can use my tab button on the keyboard, or I can just simply click on it with the mouse and retype the same password. I typed in CASAS once again, so these two passwords should match. If I type something else, and when I try to save the record, it's going to give me a message saying that your passwords do not match. So you also have this other option here, which is called is disabled. And this features in case you have a user that no longer works with your agency or is temporary on leave, you can disable their account so nobody gets in there with their username and password. And we normally recommend not to share login credentials because everything that you do in TOPSpro Enterprise or any test, it gets recorded with the username and the name of the person who did that activity or whatever activity they do. So we recommend that everybody has their own individual account. Now, for giving access to your staff members, we have a list of access groups, which are going to be easier to manage through the entire database. That way, the system can read through the access group, and it's faster. If you enter individual access rights, we're going to see a little bit later, it just takes more time to read off of those individual accounts in the individual user account. But if you do it by groups, it's best. It's definitely way better. So every user who completes the proctor and the coordinator certification trainings must forward you their certificate of completion, so you as an administrator have control or have knowledge that they have completed. And then these are different access groups that have different meanings. The ones that start with ET and they have the word coordinator or coordinator proctor or ET proctor, they are useful for e-tests online. So whoever you put into these access groups, it will give them access to e-tests online, whereas to as proctor, as coordinator proctor, or as coordinator only. you know, the different levels, right? The ET Proctor will help you start and stop testing sessions. ET Coordinator will help you to create, edit, and delete testing sessions. And of course, whoever has Coordinator and Proctor rights will have the best of both worlds. They can start and stop testing sessions and create, update, and delete testing sessions. So we normally advise to keep it to a small group of people who can have coordinator rights, because CASAS usually provides you with a list of standardized testing sessions. And if many people have coordinator rights, even though they've completed the certification trainings, sometimes it makes it hard if they don't understand what they're doing. It could become very easily to unstandardize those testing sessions. So it's up to you, to their best knowledge, to keep it to the, you know, a handful of coordinators only if you have a large staff. If you have a small staff, then keep it to 1 or 2 that would have coordinator rights. So again, and then the levels here at the system level, this would mean that it would be for e-tests online. And for the ones that say 4908 rolling kills, or in your individual agency, it will have your agency ID and name. We have TE groups that would start with TE, which stands for TOPSpro Enterprise. ET stands for e-tests. So then you have different levels of access groups. And if we have a chance, we can touch a little bit on access groups, but pretty much the name of it would tell you a lot more of it. Like TE admin access. Admin would be very similar to use your level of access as a data manager. So administrator equals a lot more like a data manager, but just to know that the admin can also help you create user accounts for other staff members and also provide access to the users into TOPSpro Enterprise only. To their level of access, to the admin, or to a lesser level of access. They won't be able to place anybody into the e-test access group because that is only reserved for the data manager. So giving somebody the TE basic access group will allow them to list and view all kinds of records and run all kinds of reports, but not really create, edit, and delete any type of testing sessions. So once you select an access group, I would click on the add button towards the right-hand side. And it says here, I cannot assign, oh yes, I'm sorry, that message, it's giving it to me because I am trying to put somebody into a TE basic access group. Since I am an administrator, I should be able to do that. So let's try another group. Okay, so this happens, folks, usually sometimes within these trainings. So let me try to choose another access group, which will hopefully give me access. So this is the ET coordinator / proctor. As soon as I clicked on the add button, I get this information message saying that I am proctor 00 and I confirm, and I have received, you know, the person completed the proctor and coordinator certification trainings. I have their copies of their files on my files, and then I'll just click yes, because I do need to acknowledge that information. So in regards to any of the other basic access groups, let me try to do that. And it looks like, for some reason, my account looks like it's not enabled with those access rights. So I'm going to skip on that option and show you the next category. For these buttons, you don't need to worry about these unless you want to suspend an account, or you want to establish that there shouldn't be a concurrent login, like they can't log in 2 different computers, for instance, or you want to want them to recycle their password and you want to enforce that. You can also check on that. And then password should be changed. Well, don't worry about this one because this will automatically check by default once you save the record on the top. But in order to save the record, we do need to enter important information. So we can skip these parts in here and just expand our next step, or our next category here. User contact. Of course, there's a lot of fields in here, but the very minimum fields to enter is first and last name and email. So again, you can type the same email address that you typed in the user identification. You can even copy that and just paste it in here whichever you prefer, it's already there. So these are the minimum fields. You're welcome to enter address, city, zip, and all that information. And I just always like to type in, you know, whatever state you're in. So that's up to you. So the minimum fields are first name, last name, and email. So once you have all this information entered, user account, password, groups, and user information, you can always save the information on the top. You can save the account. Before doing that, I'm just going to describe these other 3 categories that we have remainder in here. We have the menu access rights. And these are the same that are contained within an access group, but these would be setting them up individually in the account of the staff member. So this is what I was saying, that it's not recommended to set it up individually, but these menus, if you compare to them, are the same menus that you see on the top area, like file, change password, associate account, and options. You're going to find it under the file. Change password, associate account, and options. Disconnect and lock and change password are set by default. So if you see the view button, the ones that are on the top area above that line are granted by default. Oh no, I'm sorry. These are the ones that you have to establish, and the ones that are below are granted by default. So view, start page, and dashboard, you can see right here. So if you don't want to assign that, you can specify it into the access group, which I'm going to touch in a minute. Organization, it pertains to the organization. So you can see these menus are listed in this box here for organization. So as you can see, you can just relate to these menus on the top. So you're going to get to a point where you see the tools and the help menu in the bottom. So reports, see tools, and then help. So this finishes up with our menu. So these are the menu rights. And then if you scroll down, or I'm sorry, collapses, expand this, the container access rights. Again, I would encourage you not to check any of these if you don't want to limit your user from viewing just one particular site as well. So if a user must only see one site, then I would recommend just checking that particular one site. But we normally just keep it to the defaults. And the different stages in here for the menus, I'm going to scroll up a little bit more and explain that in here. As you can see, this is a file, these boxes are kind of shaded inside. So if I happen to check one of these boxes, it's going to check all the indented boxes underneath, like all the file or options underneath. And I'm going to, so this means a check mark means that they are granted. These menus are granted. And if I happen to uncheck it and it leaves like an empty box, it means that this option will be disabled and it will be grayed out from that person's account. And if I click on it again, it will put that shading option back in there, and all shaded options are going to be granted by default. So that's why I recommend to clear all menu rights and never do anything on here, but instead set them up in an access group, and they will inherit anything that we have established on the access groups. And we have also provided your agencies with a group of access groups, and they are all equipped with different levels of access. And you can always, those are just set up as an example. You can always go in there and grant more access or remove some of the levels. It is up to you. So now next and last step here, and I'm gonna just unpin this navigator I have on my left-hand side, so this expands this view a little bit more. We have the data access rights, where we have several types of access, like the supplemental data access rights, where you can have other options if you want to enable it to your individual student. Okay, so here's where you'll find more supplemental data access rights. We also have the role access rights, which will allow like teachers to access unenrolled students, or if you want to just restrict teachers access to our own classes. This again is for the enhanced users and its features. And then the personal information access rights, like to view full social security number or this other menu for California agencies. And yeah, that's another other supplemental rights that you can use. And now the last thing is a record type rights, which becomes a very important part of it, because this is again established through the access group. But in the case that you're in the access group and you have all these record type rights and you want them to list and view all kinds of records, that's pretty much safe, right? Because they won't be able to create, update, or delete any type of records unless you specify that in here. So for administrators like yourselves, who normally have all these menus enabled to have you delete, update, and create any type of records, so you can potentially grant those same level of rights to a certain user in depending on what their title is and what their duties will be. So you can also use this checkall and just set it back, or you can clear the data access rights and that will shade everything back. So again, we normally recommend using or granting access to your users. And I'm gonna pin this back in here, and then through the access groups, give them access through the access groups. And now I'm gonna go ahead and hit save. And that will save your user account. Any questions so far for creating user or creating class? All right, folks, I think we're doing well. I hope everything is being clear. So again, another cool feature I like to show to, and let's go into our records lister, and then I'll show you that cool feature. We have the students demographics. Whenever you want to find a student demographic information or record in here, you go to records, students, demographics, and this will show you folks a list of records of students who have activity in the current program year. You can always see this counter. If you don't see the counter right in front of you, you can probably find it under the More button. So you can personalize this schema right here on the top area. If you want to see, like for instance, you can see that I have my last name and the first name column separated. Some of you may have just the full name column. So what you can do if you want to see this lister, like in this case, I always like to alphabetize my list of students by last name. So if that becomes easier for you, you can always right click. You can right click in the name column, and then it'll give you this menu where you can show first name, or you can show the last name, and this is alphabetized, so last name would be on the else. I already set it up right here, that's why it won't show the last name, but you can find it under your own menu and say show last name, and it's gonna put you a column in all last name. And if I wanna hide the full name, then you can hide the full name, or I can just show the full name in this case, because this is what you probably, some of you may have if you haven't checked it already. Let me right click here again and hide this so I can show you. So this lister could be, and you have these other buttons here, like these two little arrows that point up and down. It looks like a little diamond, but it's two arrows pointing up and down. This is your sorting button. So you can also use these two little icons inside of each of the column headers, or you can use the sorting button you have in here, or the columns to populate more columns. So again, I just sorted this lister by student ID. It's a long list of students, so sometimes it takes a little while to refresh because it has a large student population. So I'll go ahead and right click on my name column, and I just show last name individually, last name, and it's going to populate the last name of the student. And I'll right click again in the name column, and I'll do the first name only. And this way it will populate me the first name. As you can see, this one contains sometimes the middle name in there if it's available for the student, but in this case, I'm not going to populate it. So I just want to see last name, and I want to sort it by last name. So I click on it once, and then the arrow turns yellow, or turns what, orange? It's supposed to be red, but you point it up and it will alphabetize. Of course, these numbers won't fit into the alphabetizing order. Well, it does actually. It does alphabetize right after the zeros. So when it starts with a letter A, it means that these students probably entered the wrong ID or the wrong last name. So once we start with the last names, it's going to be alphabetized here all together, all the way through down. And you can also point it down, and that will alphabetize your students lister from Z to A. So as you can see, we need to use the scroller bar back up, and it starts with the Z. Okay, so depending on how you want to sort it, you can always sort it from A to C or C to A on the last name or on the first name. So I'm just going to use this scroller bar all the way to the top. And then I want to remove this name column because it's not useful for me very much, but I'm just going to leave it like that. And I also wanted to see another thing, like if I right click in this gray empty area and I want to see, I don't know, something else, like maybe their cell phone or I don't know, their email probably, or their social security number, you know, depends what you want to see and populate in there. And once you have this already set up as you wanted to see it, you can click on the More button and then click on Schema. Once you click on Schema, you're going to get this little drop-down arrow. So I'll just keep it to the defaults because this is the default setting that I want to see. You can also name it like last name schema or just last name lister. It's up to you how you want to recognize that lister and then just hit save. If I hit save, then that schema is already saved as last name lister. And every time you open the record students demographics, it's going to open it like that with the schema that I had previously saved. But you can also click on the More button and click on the schema dropdown and also bring it back to the default. And if you bring it back to the default, it's going to show you when you open it up again, records, students, demographics is going to, it should show you the full name lister as I was doing it before. So maybe I didn't click on a few steps in here, but I hope it's clear enough that you can save your own schemas and it's recommended to set it up however you want to see it in the future. And then we have a question here. Can you sort on any field or just first and last name? Definitely, you can sort on any different field. Like you can select the gender and you can sort by gender. Let's see which one right now is doing here. It's sorting, let me sort the opposite way. So it shows you all the different genders that we have available. You can actually search or filter for females only or males. Let's filter for male individuals here in the database. You can also use your individual filters. Like I want to know how many people I have. Oh, here, instead of birth date, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to show the age. So I want to see how many individuals we have between 35 years old and 45 years old. How many male customers or students we have. And this is going to show you a list. And then this list, you can always also, again, sorted by last name, and it's going to give you a list of people who are from 35 to 45 who are male. And you can also make another search, like how many of them are, let's say, Asian. And then it's going to show you a list of that, you know, with those demographics or with those specifics under demographic information. You can always click on the More button to export these type of listers if you wanted to, you know, present it into particular. You can export it as CSV file. You can export it as a CSV file or export it as an Excel spreadsheet, but you can also present it nicer in a kind of report style way. If you click on the More button and you click on the printing and the Print button, this is going to show you the same lister we have in the background, alphabetized by last name. Let me just click on Preview, and it's going to show you that list on a report fashion style. Perfect. Okay, so this is what it looks like. See, it comprehends those same amount of students that we have here. It has 40 people in this lister, and it's populating all the columns that I have from the beginning, how I established them. And then I did the filtering for 40 people who are male, who are Asian, and who are between 35 and 45. And then you can just export it like that or print it. You can export it like this way in a report fashion style. So I hope this is helpful for you. But the other cool feature I wanted to also show you folks is, which I really like, especially when you go to the classes, I'm going to come back to the classes, organization, classes, instances. And this gives us a whole lot of classes, right? Because we have different sites. So let's say specifically, I want to see classes from the North Campus, class instances from the North Campus. Well, I would need to double click in any given class to open it up. And it's going to give me this navigator on the left-hand side. So I can click on attendance. I can see attendance from my students if they have a different category, or if there are any students enrolled, I would see them under the class enrollments. But this is not giving me anything because there's no students enrolled. So you have this little counter or these arrows here so you can navigate towards the next available class. So let's go ahead, instead of me scrolling over here, I'm just going to exit out of here and just know for a fact that I can also sort in here for the instructional program. If I minimize that, I can search for any ESL, which I know they have data in the Rolling Hills. So I'm searching for ESL classes, and I'll just go ahead and double click on this ESL beginning, and I'll click on class enrollments. And of course, this doesn't have any enrollments either. Sorry about that. So let me just scroll down and just double click on any of these other classes. Okay, this one does have enrollments. This class does have enrollments. And as you can see, we opened several amounts here, several tabs in here. And I'm going to show you a quicker way. I'd like to go to organization, classes, instances, which is the same. I am going to enable my child lister under the more button. If you click more, you're going to find this little child lister, which is also included in many of our listers. Doesn't necessarily have to be classes only. And I'm going to get to that question, Vilma, in just a second, okay? So we can have the class lister, and we have the child lister enabled. And guess what, folks? This is going to tell me exactly what information is underneath each of these classes without you having to open it up and open another window and another tab. This will simplify everything, and it'll just kind of like cut off your screen in half. But here, when you click on class enrollments and you just click on the class, it will tell you all the class enrollments. And you always have this little scrolling bar towards the right-hand side, which you can manipulate. You can also look at their class records, and you can like the attendance, the hours of attendance. You can also see who has tests inside of those, who has tested in that class. So I think this is a really cool feature, the child lister, so that way you don't have to go inside into each of the classes and then exit out of that. It will just simply enable the child lister, and it will tell you all the inside information within. You can, again, click on the drop-down arrow and then click on the drop-down and select the specific site that you want to see for. You can continue doing your filterings as usual, like I did before for the ESL as well. So it's the same menus, same filtering options, but it's just a quicker way to access your classes and the information on within, just for you to view the record. So I hope this is helpful. Again, we are recording this session, so you can always come back to it and review all this information. Some of the other information that we can touch on today, folks, is under the reports. I know we have a very limited time now, but I have another question again. Sorry, before going there, is it possible to filter all students by race, ethnicity, and when then by CASAS level to see the range of enrollment levels for students by race, ethnicity. Okay, that is a little bit more advanced question, but you do have the reports that address that, like Janice Farah said, and thank you, Janice, for answering the other question as well. So I can quickly go to that report. We have several NRS reports under the reports menu. We have the data management, NRS data integrity, the NRS data integrity detail. We also have under federal reports, we have these NRS tables, the monitor, which is a really cool report to find about, let me run this really quick. The NRS federal tables, the monitor report, I'm gonna run it for the entire agency. And again, folks, please don't get overwhelmed with all these options and think, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? Well, no, remember, collapse, and then it's going to minimize all the information. If you want to see it for this program year, it's always set by default to the current program year, but you can also view data from previous program years. And if you want to just limit for people who are enrolled in the ESL program, for example, then you can uncheck the rest of the programs. These are the 4 different basic programs that are for usual federal reporting. So I'll just go ahead and generate as is. I did not make any changes, or all the changes I did, I set them back to the default. So this report is going to take a few seconds, of course, depends on the amount of data that you have stored on your database. It will take either faster or sooner. Oh, and of course, this page gives me this warning that it's warning me that it's too many pages, and the parameter, we need to filter for less classes or less information. So here in the output layout parameters, we're going to find this warning. We'll deactivate this warning because I don't want to see that warning for too many pages. Here you can establish the specifics on the printing option, like if you want to see the ID and then the name, or if you just want to see the ID or just the name, or the name and ID, and then other criteria. So you can come back to it and manipulate it, and then set up like how you want to report it, like for class level, for site level, for agency. So there are some defaults, so you can always, make your arrangements, and then we have some drop reasons as well, because they have to meet the NRS criteria for that. So what I can do is click on from the report setup navigator on the left-hand side. We can do some class instances, for example. Let's narrow these down, and we can do, for instance, like the class instances for ESL. Sorry, you can't see this because I have another screen and it's populating on my other screen, but I just filtered for the ESL classes. And you can do that as well with the general settings. These are the people who are enrolled now in the ESL program only. It's different than when you have people enrolled in the ESL classes. So this is what I'm going to run it for, just for people who are enrolled in ESL classes. So I'll just hit that generate button, and I hope this time it's not too big to populate, and I would show you. And then we have some responses here from Janice Farah. NRS table 1 has the, oh yes, that's true. NRS table 1 has the ethnicity by EFL level. So again, it's under the reports menu. Okay, so our report generated, and I'm gonna unpin this navigator so it expands the view. It usually gives you information, and this little D here means drop reasons. Student is gonna give you the ID number, gender, some important information about the student, how many periods of participation that the student has. It's listed right here. And then it gives you when the person started the program, and then how many days they have been absent from instruction, and then their pre and their post test information. This is something really cool that you can populate, you can run at your local agency and try to see who doesn't have like a post test from here. Then you can, probably address that. And we have a wealth of reports, and then we also have a wealth of documentation on our website. And then at the end, you will find the drop reasons that for some reason they're not being listed in here. So in a nutshell, folks, I would encourage you to definitely continue using the Rolling Hills database. We didn't touch much on the tools menu. These are a little bit more advanced features for other activities that you would probably need to perform if you're doing scanning at your local agency, or if you're importing from a third-party attendance system, importing your data from there, or doing other activities listed in here. And last thing, we have the help with the contents, release notes, and end user agreement. We have the release notes where we inform about the new builds and what features we have been doing on them. So definitely, I would encourage you to continue using the Rolling Hills database. You can't really break anything in here. I would actually encourage you to try to break something in our TOPSpro Enterprise Rolling Hills database and let us know. So it was a pleasure spending some time with you talking about these important features in TOPSpro Enterprise. One last thing. Let's go back to this class instances lister. You can also, folks, compare class to class by cutting your screen in half. If you click on the pages button, you have this new vertical page. You can do a horizontal or vertical page group. The horizontal looks like something very similar to what you have right here with the class enrollments child lister thing. But if I do a new vertical page group, I can also cut my screen in half, and then I can actually bring information by just pulling it to the other blue section on the top right here. And then we can compare class by class, you know, enrollment by enrollment in that particular way. So this is probably another feature that you would like to practice and on your very own agency. All right, so remember pages, new vertical page, and you can also do a new horizontal page group depending on the screen size that you have. And then you can also bring up like your report over here and drop it in there. And then that way you have multiple sites of your TOPSpro Enterprise. So I hope the session was informative. Please let me know if you have any questions about everything that I have touched in here today. I'm open to opening your mic and expressing it, or you can type it in the chat box. Oh, thank you, Anna. Thanks, Vladimir. Awesome, awesome. I hope you can just put this to practice whenever you have a chance. Again, the Rolling Hills simulation is a very helpful tool. I understand. Yeah, you're welcome. Let's see, we have some questions. Yeah, we can stay after and chat for a little moment if you have any things that you'd like to address. Definitely. Oh, you're most welcome. I thank you for coming to the session and sticking along with me for this hour and a half. Thank you, folks. Some of you I've already talked to you on the phone, most likely. So if you haven't, you could just call us and say hi if you have any questions. A lot of crazy information. Yes, that's what it's all about. Try to break TE simulation and let us know. All right, folks. Well, thank you. I really appreciate your participation today. If you have already written your name and agency, that's great. We will count you as participated for today. And just to remind you that we have another webinar coming up. Let me do a new share and show you here our trainings for, we have a March 29 training coming up for TOPSpro Enterprise as well. If your coworkers or some people you know or you would like to get another refresher of TOPSpro Enterprise basics, definitely let me send you a link where you can actually register. Here, let's see, events, and I usually filter.
Hey Martha, I sent a link in the chat.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have so many messages now. Okay, perfect. So Nicole posted the link for the next training on the chat. And for those of you who are still on, you can click on the chat feature and click that file, those three little buttons next to the file, and you can save the chat. That way you can keep all the links and all the questions and important responses in your chat feature. Okay. And you can save it into one of your files or a place in TopsPro in your in your computer. So now I hope this was informative. You can also contact us where it says contact us. You will find the tech support information. We are open from 6 to 5 Pacific time and usually Monday to Friday. And on my part, I think that's all. Folks, I really appreciate you standing this far long. We have we'll stay a few more minutes in case you have any specific things that you would like to address. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.